What does Davy Crockett have to do with Kings Island? Hello, I'm Don Helbig, alongside my co host Ryan Sir, and this is Tower Topics.
Tower Topics is a podcast for Kings Island fans by Kings Island fans because that's who we are. That's who we care about.
Ryan, we've got quite the tale for you on this episode of Tower Topics.
Yeah, that's right, Don. It's in the swinging 60s. Two iconic American figures, Davy Crockett and Daniel Boone. Daniel Boone being a hero of us Kentuckians, or at least the man who portrayed them on TV, found themselves in an unexpected competition to build an amusement park.
Now, it's a story of ambition and theme park dreams, and it all started when the legendary Hollywood actor Fess Parker set his sights on Boone County in northern Kentucky, where he envisioned creating a pioneer themed amusement park, and he was going to call it Frontier World.
That's right, Don. Parker had a vision. The Fespar investment team, as he called it, and all the Hollywood connections to make it happen. He believed in the potential for tremendous success with this particular project.
Well, with his name, it probably would have been a success, but at the same time, across the river in Cincinnati, Gary Walks, he was the son of Coney Island's owner, Ralph Walks. He was facing a different kind of challenge. He recognized that the increasing crowds they were having at Coney Island, the lack of room for expansion, and the routine floods could spell disaster for Coney Island.
Yeah, but convincing the board of directors at the time was quite an uphill battle. As we've come to find out, the mere mention of closing the highly successful park brought scoffs from the board. After all, why mess with something that wasn't broken?
Well, things took a dramatic turn on September 9th, 1968, when Fess Parker officially announced his plan to build Frontier World. With Frontier World looming about an hour away, Coney Island faced a very real possibility of having to close for good should that park come to fruition.
Yeah, and then overnight, Gary Walks, who had previously struggled to get support, found himself with the ear of concerned Coney Island shareholders, but he knew they needed a backer in deep pockets to make the move happen.
And that's where Cincinnati based Tap Broadcasting comes into play. They were a media conglomerate that had recently acquired Hanna-Barbera Studios, known for Saturday morning cartoons.
Yeah, and then Walks met with the heads of Taft, which was Lawrence Rogers and Charles Metcham, and proposed a bold merger. Taft would provide the financing, Coney Island staff would oversee the project, and together they would incorporate beloved Hanna-Barbera characters into the new theme park.
Then on March 28, 1969, it was the same day that President Dwight D. Eisenhower passed away, Taft Broadcasting and Coney Island made it official. They were jointly building a theme park 20 miles north of the city in Kings Mills, Ohio.
And things moved quickly from there. On Tuesday, April 22nd, the announcement of Taft's preliminary acquisition of Coney Island was made. And by July 14th, 1969, the $6.5 million sale was complete.
Yeah, just 10 months after Fess Parker's Frontier World announcement, the deal to build the new Coney Island was done.
But the story didn't really end there. Fess Parker soon realized that his Frontier World couldn't compete with the new Taft owned theme park. Coney Island's board, filled with powerful Cincinnati businessmen, effectively blocked Parker's request for financial backing.
On February 28, 1971, Fess Parker officially abandoned his Frontier World dream in northern Kentucky, and then in October of 1972, he announced the new location in Santa Clara, California. But after a financial dispute, he stepped away. Marriott Corporation ended up building the park, though not as originally proposed. That park is now known as California's Great America.
Yeah, and then in 1976, Marriott's Great America opened in Santa Clara with Fess Parker no longer involved.
But back in Cincinnati, Gary Walk's dream of a new Coney Island had become a reality. Taft had the financing, and the plan was in place. The next challenge was to bring the new park to life, which happened with the birth of Kings Island.
And there you have it. That's how Davy Crockett slash Daniel Boone, better known as Fess Parker, was directly involved with Kings Island.
Now, can you imagine if people still had not, when Gary Walks was making his pitch and
Mm.
talking about what a concern this was going to be and everything, if they'd have just continued to say nope, business as usual, you wouldn't have Kings Island.
You wouldn't, and I've always wondered what Frontier World would look like today. We approximately know where it would be. It was going to be somewhere near where 71 and 75 converge, just southern Boone County, so a little closer for me than Kings Island, but It may not have drawn the market that that Kings Island does, because Kings Island's a little bit more centrally located.
Yeah, I think that was the drawing card for putting Kings Island in Kings Mills, Ohio, because you were 2 hours from Columbus, 2 hours from Indianapolis, 2 hours from Lexington, 2 hours from Louisville. So it was just perfectly located right there.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder what would happen with Coney Island if that had happened. Would Coney Island exist today, and in what form?
I think it would have become a second-rate park. I think that was always, my conversations with Gary Walks. He was concerned it would have become, he used the term like Americana. Would have been a second-rate park, not the elite, finest run amusement park in the country, as it was dubbed. I think he was really worried about that happening.
Yeah, and and it's funny that he brings up Americana, because that Americana's from a day and age where every part of town could have their own amusement park and they could support it. Um, but Americana fell to the fact that,
And I think what he meant by that too, Ryan, when he called it a second-rate park, I think he meant that that was just where the locals were going.
oh
You
yeah,
weren't having people come down the river and things and going to the park. He wasn't meaning in terms of how the park operated, I don't think.
no, no, exactly, and that's not what I'm getting at. But essentially, what I'm thinking is that, with Americana being dangerously close to Kings Island, it definitely became that's where the locals are, that's where the cheap tickets are, that's where the cheap food is, and that's not always a sustainable business model. Sometimes two places can coexist. I mean, Kings Island and its water park coexisted with the beach water park for 30 years.
Yeah.
But sometimes this town ain't big enough for both of them. But so to your recollection, so this Fess Parker thing, was this something you knew about back then?
Well, I
You
mean,
were
I
little.
just I was real little, real little. I don't really remember much about that other than I kind of um, started to know that Coney's days were numbered because I remember my parents talking about it when Taft bought the park and there was gonna be plans for a new one, and they were looking to move it. Skeptical, whether that was ever going to happen and everything. So I didn't really know, like Bess Parker was involved in building a park at that time, anything like that. Just that as it got to be like 1968, 69, just those rumblings that Coney's days could be numbered.
Yeah, I mean, that's I've always wondered about this, because I wonder what his park would have looked like. Like, I can
Uh,
imagine what it would look. Did he ever announce what the park was going to be, or that just it was going to be a thing?
just going to be an amusement park, and I think if you look at 1976, when Marriott opened the park in Santa Clara, I think maybe something along those lines because they had to take the plans from somebody, when they ended up doing it instead of him. So maybe something along with that park would have looked like.
Yeah, I mean, the only park I can think of where they conceptualize it and then it's built relatively close to what the original ones wanted to, under situations like that, would be Kings Island. Because if you saw International Street and stuff like that, it's kind of like you see it and you know it. But so often, somebody like Fess Parker has this idea, Marriott steps in, and then Marriott's got the money, so they make the calls. And then on top of that, ultimately, he wasn't involved with the opening of the park. So I'd be interested to see if that holds water. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying that it would be
Yeah,
interesting. Yeah.
I think you're right. But this was fun.
Yeah,
Fun little
definitely.
flashback of what could have been.
Absolutely. The good old days when Davy Crockett ruled Kings Island. So awesome. Hey, let's do another listener question. This one comes from Rich. He says, "Hey Helbig, when did you start thinking about working PR at Kings Island? Was you thinking about it when you ride all them rides?" So Don,
Was I
was you
thinking
thinking
about
about it
it?
when you ride all them rides?
I started thinking about it when I realized that I wasn't going to become a utility infielder outfielder for the Cincinnati Reds, like one of my favorite players growing up, Jimmy Stewart. So that was kind of the dream when you're a little kid that, you're going to play for the Reds. I'm going to be a utility infielder type of thing. So I realized that wasn't going to happen. I had to start thinking about some other things. And then, in the early 80s, you start to learn that there's, hey, there's PR people at the park. They promote the park. That'd be kind of a fun job. So you start thinking about that, maybe 1983, 84 range where I really started to think about it, Rich.
Yeah. I remember when I was really little, I'd ask my dad about once a week why he didn't play for the Reds, because he'd practice baseball with me and he's so much better than me. I assumed he was as good as like Chris Sabo and all those people. But yeah, yeah, good question, Rich. Cool. Hey, we learned something today. So hey, I'm Ryan Sir along with Don Helbig, and this is another episode of Tower Topics.